Okay, perfect. Do you need a broad introduction?
No. No. I can do that myself. Oh, I have to stand at the microphone, don't I?
Yeah,
Do
well,
we have somebody on?
microphones here, so they'll pick up here
Brilliant.
too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
and
course.
when you get to a level there,
I'm good. They can all hear me. I don't know who's on the line, but we'll jump in. So good morning, everybody. It's still morning. My name is Lisa Schwiebert. I think I know many of you here. Just a quick intro for myself. I've been a long-time faculty member here. I'm in my 23rd year. And throughout that time, have been involved in a number of different education-related efforts too. Currently, I'm now full-time in the graduate school as a Senior Associate Dean for Grad and Customer Affairs, which just means I do a little bit of everything. And one other hat that I wear is the RCR training for the university. So I'm going to do a little bit of a refresher it's kind of a review of some of the slides I presented several months ago, actually, on the responsible conduct of research. And then we're going to talk a lot about some resources, because I think many of you are interested in what do you need to put into a grant application if you're applying for a training grant like a K01 or a K08 or maybe an F award. Can we quickly just go around the room and give me your name, if you're a grad student or a postdoc or a doctoral student, what have you, and what grant you're thinking about writing toward. We'll start here.
My name is Yu Wei from dermatology. I'm a J1 scholar. I'm like kind of new started, so I'm not sure about everything.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Brandon Roberts. I'm a postdoc, and I think the next grant is some type of K.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Oh, I'm Leah. I am just touring here with Becky today.
Terrific. Becky, I know. You all know too.
Yeah, so Becky Ramey, I work with CCTS in the training space and work with the different grant writing programs that we have going on right now.
Super.
My name is Yuan. I'm also G1 teaching scholar. I came here 4 months ago. I'm not sure about the
Sure. Well, fantastic. Welcome. And just the fact that you're here and interested in learning about the topic means you're on your way toward that grant writing. This is a pretty informal group, and let me just ask on the line if we have anyone that'd like to introduce themselves. If not, that's okay. So this is a pretty small group, so please feel free to interrupt me with questions or comments, and we'll get going. So as I mentioned, we're going to review and update some of the training that I provided a few months ago on responsible conduct of research. We're going to talk about what information in that space is going to be needed for particular grants, like a K award. And then we're going to I'm going to tell you about some really hot off the press new research ethics related resources that we've either just obtained or will obtain by the fall here at UAB. And that'll be open to everybody. So for those of you who have seen me give this presentation a little bit before, you know I like blank slides, and I don't move forward until I hear people talk. So, why do we do research? Why do it?
Answer questions.
Answer questions because it's fun, right? Why else? What is research?
Our research is about vitamin D effect on the melanoma.
Okay. So it's gathering new knowledge, right? Why would we want to do that?
Solve a problem.
Solve a problem. So we do experiments to generate data, right? We add to that larger body of knowledge that is in our field. Maybe it's dermatology, maybe exercise phys, or something else. But we do that to move the needle, to have an impact, right? To take action, whether it's developing a new vaccine, developing a new treatment, some kind of therapeutic, it's to have an impact. And we really have an impact for society writ large. They are depending on us to improve their lives through research. So really, we have to be careful and responsible to maintain our scientific integrity because it is a matter of public trust. They support what we do through taxes. We just paid our taxes, painful, but it funds our research through the NIH or NSF, what have you. But they also participate in our experiments. We are in the CCTS space, the translational world. We need them to participate in our clinical trials to really better understand the work that we're doing. So they do rely upon us to improve their lives. When things go sideways then, it starts to erode that trust. So when we read about it in the paper, the New York Times, or we see it on the news, that perhaps there's been a data breach, or maybe someone hasn't been completely truthful in their work, that starts to chip away at the trust that they have in what we do. So putting it now in the context of research integrity, that means being careful, right? With our experimental design, accurate record keeping, data analysis certainly, data collection, storage, and so forth, and ultimately publishing what we find. You know, we throw the term data around all the time. How do you define data? If we want to manage data, we have to define it. What is it?
Numbers.
Numbers. What else?
Maybe expression of something we're interested in.
So how do we get those numbers and that expression?
Experiments.
Okay, what goes into an experiment?
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff, right? Everything from A to B, start to finish. Methodology, the design, how we calibrate our instruments, how we collect those samples, how we store them, right? How we analyze those numbers. All of those different pieces can be considered data. So we have to manage and be careful with all of those pieces to make sure you're calibrating that particular instrument correctly, for example. Bunch of different resources, and we're going to send out these slides. I have a ton of embedded links that have different resources and guidance that I think you'll find helpful going forward. One of these is, I can do this, yes, is the Office of Research Integrity at the NIH. They have many different pieces of information all centered around these different modules that you see here. Again, everything from data acquisition, data management, animal welfare, and so forth. So let's just click on this link for a second. And any luck? Yes. And you can see that there is just a ton of information. Resources for training and teaching that I borrow from a good deal rather for our courses. But also too, if you just want to be up on any news about research integrity, if that's something that keeps you up at night, like it does me, you can find it here. Again, just another piece of a resource for you to know of. So then, we know that research is generating information to improve people's lives, right? And we know that data is everything from start to finish in that experiment. So then what is research misconduct? What does that mean?
Data manipulation or fabrication.
Fabrication. What else? Do you know the acronym FFP? You're close, Brendan. And I put these definitions up from the Office of Research Integrity, also the National Endowment for Humanities, as well as UAB, because I want to show you that this is really shared across disciplines. It's fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. What's fabrication?
So if you just made up your data, just
You
straight notes, 1, 2, 3.
Yep,
and then
just sat down, wrote up a story. Fabrication, just made it up. So if making up data is fabrication, what's falsification? What's the difference?
maybe manipulating your data
How?
or excluding some numbers but not others. Or
That outlier, yeah, it doesn't really fit with my hypothesis. So I'm sure there's a reason I was going to throw it, right? So choosing data maybe it's not calibrating that particular machine in the right way so that you get the right data. I'm winking for those who are online. So it's a little different, right? It's kind of picking and choosing the data that you have to fit your hypothesis. So then what's plagiarism?
Copies of others.
Right, so taking other people's work or data and calling it your own. So plagiarism is not only stealing words, it can be stealing ideas, stealing numbers as well. People always think of it as, just kind of copying words down from a particular paper. Well, it can also be ideas too. There are so many sad examples of people who have committed misconduct, either here at UAB, sadly, or from other institutions. The most recent high-profile one is out of Duke University that hit the New York Times about a month ago. There was a research technician who had falsified and fabricated data in about 30 grants that were funded ultimately by the NIH. There was a whistleblower who finally said, here's what's happened. Not only does Duke have to pay back all of the monies that it garnered through those funded grants, they have to pay a fine of over $100 million in addition. Just made up the data on different grants. People have gone to jail, actually, for fabricating data. It's fraud. So those are the things that can erode really the trust in the public that they have for what we do. So that's why we have to be very mindful and careful, whether it's manipulating images in publications or grants, inappropriate methods or design, poor mentoring. Poor mentoring. Mentoring for me runs through all of the different elements of research conduct. That mentor should be the role model for how a trainee would perform an experiment or interpret an experiment, for example. A lot of this has really come together and is probably best illustrated by the impact of society on vaccines. You can't escape this story right now. So about 20 years ago, Andrew Wakefield published in The Lancet a publication implicating the MMR vaccine as causing autism. He basically did this study on a very small group of patients. In effect, he essentially lifted samples from Dixie cups of his 6-year-old's birthday party. No informed consent there. Analyzed those samples and essentially made up the story that the two were linked. This certainly caught a lot of press. This particular line of investigation has been debunked over and over and over again, yet it is only just one part, certainly, of this anti-vaccine movement that we're dealing with lately. But it definitely got the ball rolling. It's a many layered problem, no question. But this is one element that we as scientists in the field apparently, sadly, has contributed to. UAB takes the definition of misconduct a little bit farther beyond the FFP and state, as shown here, intentionally withholding information relevant to an investigation. Perhaps someone has brought a concern to the integrity officer. We'll learn about that process at the end. Bringing a malicious charge or acts rather of interference or retaliation if a concern is expressed. So again, they go beyond the FFP to talk about action during an investigation. Any questions? Okay. So we've talked about how misconduct is this fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. What is not misconduct?
Reporting all of your data.
Reporting all of your data, yes.
Telling the true story.
So telling the true story. So you're up late at night, you're doing data entry, you transpose a few numbers. Is that misconduct? Yeah, we're human. We make errors all the time. But owning that error and correcting it, that's the right thing to do. But honest error is not misconduct. Neither is difference of opinion or interpretation. Maybe uncomfortable. I'll never forget my first real scientific meeting. I was, all big eyes, and there were these two people on the stage that I had read all their work, and they were arguing. They were yelling at each other. It was uncomfortable, but it wasn't misconduct. They definitely had their own interpretation. They were sticking with it. But that's how we move the needle. It's that discourse and conversation. I always want my trainees to argue with me. That means that they're reading the literature, they've thought about the work, they're passionate about what they do and want to know. But that's not misconduct. So I want to transition out into a little bit of the requirements that you will see for this type of information on training grants, whether it's a K award or perhaps an F award, like an F32 for postdocs or such. So the requirement from the NIH is that any career development award, such as the Ks or the Fs or the training grants, have to include instruction in responsible conduct of research. So what does that mean? So we're going to look at that link in just a second, but essentially it's summarized here. They want to know, the reviewers want to know the format of the instruction. Is it a course? Is it a series of workshops? How do you structure that type of information? Do you cover all subjects that I listed earlier, as was on the ORI side, with regard to human subjects, animals, data management, and so forth? Who participates? Who's doing this instruction? Is it just one person, or is it a broad scope of faculty that participate? How long does it last? And how often do you have to take it? So we're going to get in the weeds here a little bit and go to that NIH link that has many more details. Again, this is for you to look at later and dig through and take the nuggets that you need or maybe want to know more about. So there's a listing of all of the awards that have to have this type of information. And we're going to look at samples from the NIH in just a little bit. So here are those instructional components that I was referring to. So again, format definitely has to have an in-person component that lasts at least in total 8 hours. Subject matter, again, these are the 9 topics that you saw listed earlier. Faculty participation. Reviewers really want to see a breadth of faculty that participate in that training program, say it's a T32, or perhaps who may be on your mentoring committee if it's a K award, to be involved in some level of that instruction. Again, I'm going to show you another link shortly where we involve a number of faculty from across the university in the GRD 717 course that I direct as an opportunity for them. And this has to happen every 4 years. And if you change levels, meaning, or status, if you go from trainee to faculty, that clock starts all over again and you have to have new training. And we're just implementing that here at UAB for faculty. It's going live this fall. So yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it's better to have the training before, do you recommend to do the training before you apply for the grant? Or
so
part of the...
Sure, depending on what your appointment is. So for a graduate student, they have to have training before they can enter candidacy. For a postdoctoral fellow, they have to have training early in that first year if they can't provide documentation that they've had it prior. Certainly professional students as well, early in their training, we work with the medical school education staff to implement that too. All early in their training, so they have taken it before they even put together that award, or that application, I should say. But it's not a prerequisite. It's highly encouraged that they can show it on a transcript, because many times for these type of career awards still, you have to show a transcript of courses that have been taken. So.
And then there is language on...
We're going to see it.
Got it.
Go there.
Thank you.
Exactly right. So let me interject here too. I sit on 2 different training grant sections. One's for individual training grants, one's institutional. And we do review every piece of the application, including the RCR piece. If there are concerns about the RCR description, it doesn't mean your grant won't get funded. It might hold it up, the award, until you provide the information or answer the questions that the committee has, but it's not going to negate any kind of funding score. So let me just put that in.
I have another
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
So if it's 8 hours every 4 years.
Yep.
Do you think it's better to spread that out or have it all at one time?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I'm here is because I think continual, you know.
So I would say the 8 hours at one time is a minimum. Certainly it's encouraged, and we're going to look at all of the resources that we have here to help encourage additional RCR training, whether it's facilitating sessions that I help to do, or workshops such as this. The 8 hours should be just the baseline, and then there should be efforts layered on top of that. Yep. But it's hard to have a stick beyond those 8 hours. We just strongly encouraged. But good question. So what do we have here? So first we're going to look at that language as you were thinking about or asking us. There we go. So we have built out a training grant website that has a ton of information, both for trainees as well as faculty. A lot of these are centered on NRSAs, which are those T32s or the F awards, 30, 31s, and 32s. But there are a ton of boilerplate information as well that can be applied certainly to career awards such as the K01 or K08. A lot of that information is here, and you can see if I can read. Here we go, RCR, right there. And here you're going to see a list of text that you are welcome to grab and modify as it fits your particular needs and training. So there's an overview, then there's the listed coursework. This includes 717 that I was mentioning. That is required for doctoral students, PhD students, as well as postdoctoral fellows who can demonstrate prior training. It covers all of those topics. Duration, it's an 8-hour workshop plus some online module work through the CITY program. And here's the list of current faculty who have participated in facilitating the 8-hour workshops. I offer them 4 times every semester, spring, summer, fall, all year round. So we can capture all of the students who certainly need it, because it's lots of faculty. In addition, there are other courses that are on the books. Some are provided through the professional development program at the graduate school, Power of Ethical Thinking, ethical writing, certainly biomedical ethics is a popular course. And then there are more institutional resources that you can see here. So again, this is all information for you to grab and make it your own. Tailor it to your needs, whatever particular effort or a program that you will be training in. And I highly encourage that from my reviewer's standpoint. I don't want to see a cookie cutter that, oh, this is just what my university does. It's really a good effort to make it tailored to your particular program. It shows that you've put thought into it and really care about it. Questions? All right, keep going.
I do have a question.
Of course.
CCTS hosts the bioethics half-day workshop.
Oh, we should put it on there.
Yeah, so that would count.
Definitely, absolutely.
Yeah.
It would certainly be a wonderful addition to the list. But the 717, 8-hour that covers all of these different topics is really what that grant's going to need to show that they can do or will take. But I would love to add the bioethics piece from CCTS. That'd be great.
Thank you.
The research administration website also has additional information. So this is out of the Office for the VP for Research, Chris Brown. You can see here that there's a tab for integrity as well as responsible conduct of research. And a lot of what I just showed you is here again. So different places that you can certainly find it as well. Additional resources, we've looked at UAB ones. Here it profiles CITY, and that's the online piece for the 717 course. We have those who are enrolled have to take all of the modules through CITY. There are 14 now, I think. And again, you can see links to resources outside of UAB. So there really is a ton of information out there. I also wanted to highlight the topic of rigor and reproducibility. While not classically thought of as a research conduct effort, I think it should be. I think a lot of people use that interchangeably sometimes, but there is a growing effort and requirement now from the NIH about wanting to see how trainees will be trained in rigor reproducibility. And CCTS has been at the forefront with the Kaizen R2. Has anyone taken R2T? It's fun. I'm not sure when the next.
It's going on, it actually started this week, so if you're still interested, we can get you.
Perfect.
Sure.
So it's really cool. If you want to talk, you probably know more about it than I do.
Yeah, so Kaizen is an online gaming platform that James Willett created, and thinking about how busy people are just with their own, their own worlds and whatever they're doing. And so this can be a game that you can play at midnight in the car. It's kind of his idea. So it really is, it's a kind of team effort too, to go in, and there are, I think there are 4 different articles and then questions attached to those articles about your reproducibility. So Kaizen is just the online platform. The RT2 is the actual game that you would play, but nursing has adopted Kaizen for different games as well. So you may have heard it in different contexts.
Nice. I mean, I've not played it yet. I keep meaning to, but it just sounds like a huge amount of fun.
Yeah,
to be able
there's a
to.
leaderboard.
Yeah.
You can make up your name.
You can get badges.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It is good.
Very cool.
Finish this week's stuff. It's pretty neat.
Oh, so you did do it.
Yeah.
Sweet. Great. I want to come back to these sample grants at the end because I want you to be able to see samples of grants that have been funded and what the information was like that they provided. So we're going to come back to that. I mentioned at the outset that UAB has either already purchased or is considering purchasing additional RCR resources for use by anyone here in the UAB community. The first one is Authenticate. Are you familiar with Turnitin? It's a plagiarism software platform. You can put text into this platform and it'll tell you if it's been published somewhere else. This is really to, for us all to check our work. I know if I'm getting ready to write a review and I've read a bunch of different papers and I start typing what I feel like I've already read, and sure enough, there it is. So this is really to keep us all on our toes and just to double check. So this is our link now. And I'm going to try and get in here and show you just what the platform looks like so you can be familiar. Oh no, what? I think doesn't like this. Doesn't like Google. Oh, I bet it's on. Oops. It doesn't like that search engine. Nuggets. Let's see if we can do, let's try this one. Okay, give it a go. UAB.edu. Uh-oh. Not now. Come on. UAB.edu/authenticate. Okay, we should be able to log in. Fingers crossed. We're in. Okay, so you can see I've just been starting to play around with this a little bit. Essentially, you can upload a document. You could put in your name, what have you, upload a document. It'll automatically start combing through it to see if there's anything else in its database that lines up with what you have entered. Now I want to go back. And this test one that I did, it showed, it was kind of 6% overlap, which is not a concern. That's probably, some kind of standard. How many different ways can you say the frog is green, right? There's some standard things out there. So that is pretty user-friendly, but if you need help, there's a whole bunch of help center issues that you can get help with. So again, you're gonna have this link, you can play around with it. This was just rolled out and should have been disseminated by a lot of the associate research deans in the various schools. That is now free for anyone to use. The other resource we are just now starting to pilot, I believe in June next month, is Lab Archives. Are you familiar with electronic lab notebooks? This is a way to really help with data management, to really protect against falsification, fabrication, loss of data, to have it all stored. I understand it's in the cloud, and it's apparently encrypted and safe and protected and all of that. So again, it's to assist with data management. There are about 20 labs that are participating in this pilot effort, again, starting next month. This is the research notebook. You can dig in and find out more information, but it is too pretty user-friendly. You can have different files or folders for everybody in your lab or group. They can exchange data. It's all time-stamped and protected. All things going well, and if everyone likes it and agrees, we'll be able to purchase a university-wide license starting in October. And again, too, it would be for everyone to use at no cost. That is our goal. So just to finish up here, I wanted to make sure that you all knew the process. If you do have a concern, or if anyone does have a concern, that there are people that you can turn to, whether it's your supervisor, chair, certainly anyone in the grad school, myself, can help you navigate a concern about misconduct. But if you want to report anonymously, there are ways to do that as well, either over the phone or by the website. This information would all route through a third party. You don't give your name, you actually get a case number. And then your concern is routed to the Research Integrity Officer, Pam Bonellis. It is she then who examines the concern to see if it's credible. She assesses it, and if it is, in her view, then she starts her process of investigation. The first step is to put together an inquiry team of faculty, generally 3 faculty members who have knowledge in a particular discipline or area, so they're familiar with that type of work. That team then combs through all of the data, and what I mean by that would be the numbers and the notebooks and certainly anything on a computer, but it's also looking at grant applications, publications, perhaps samples, machinery, looking at all of that big picture. I've been on one of these committees. It's gut-wrenching to have to comb through this type of effort on someone you've known maybe for years. It's the job of the inquiry team to say, yeah, something happened. We don't know who or what did it, but something happened. That then falls to the investigative team, which is a completely different set of faculty that come on to investigate that particular area. If ultimately, at the end of the day, they find that misconduct has happened, that's put together in a final report, routed to the NIH or the funding source that has provided monies for that work. And then there are certainly a number of things that could happen. Perhaps someone could be fired or reprimanded. But certainly if someone is not guilty, then the institution has a responsibility to clear their name as well. So it can be a very long process. It can take years. But ultimately, I think this is the best way we have to protect ourselves and the data and society's interest. Because at the end of the day, we lean on Uncle Albert, who says that many people say it's the intellect that makes a great scientist. They are wrong. It's character. So with that, I'll just show you some contact information. Pam is retiring at the end of this month, and Joe Roberson from the research office will be filling in until a new Rio is appointed. Any questions? Let's go back and look at those samples, as I mentioned, because I think that's always a great thing. If you can see what others have kind of framed and that's been accepted well, that gives you a nice framework to understand. This is information on the NIH website, specifically the NIAID, the Immunology Institute, if you will. Close that out. Sample applications of all flavors. We're going to scroll down to see the training grants, but certainly research grants are here. Scroll all the way down. Went too far. Here we go. I want to go to the KO8. So there are definitely templates on the CCTS website as well. A lot of those just have the science piece and not the full application that includes the RCR. So these templates do. I want to first look at this one. So this is the full grant as a reviewer would see it, if you will. And we are going to go all the way down to page 100 or so. That's the science, of course. That's it. That's what they've given. That's what they submitted as part of their RCR information. I would have probably organized it a little differently to help the reviewer see all of that content that would be required, but I believe it's there because if we need to go back. Because the beauty of this site is that you also get the summary statement. So the summary statement is provided to the applicant following the review, right? It has all the nitty-gritty, dirty details of what the reviewers thought about the grant. But it also has a statement about the RCR training. So you saw the pretty abbreviated blurb that this person had included with his or her submission. Here's what the reviewer said. We're going to go all the way down. Nope, went too far, sorry. There it is. Training in RCR, acceptable. That's what you want to see. So again, you have a template, kind of a framework of what others have submitted and what was viewed as acceptable by the reviewers. That's why I wanted to show this particular website so that you can see. Want to look at some more samples? Maybe, maybe not. We go back. So that was a KO8. I'm going to look at a KO1. Let's look at that. I remember right, this one is on page 109. And there's that one. This one has a little bit more information. I like the way it's organized. I like the headings. As a reviewer, now I can easily see, does it meet all of those content requirements? Looks great. Again, you can go back and look at the summary statement for that particular one.
And really, as you're writing, it's helpful to read through the summary statement.
Mm-hmm.
Compare the two.
So helpful. Yep, absolutely. So you can see here again, comment acceptable. And then there are some comments about the format and such, frequency. Very, very helpful. Those pieces of information are out there. But I agree, it really helps to look at the summary statements. You can really tell then how things were framed, what was liked, what wasn't, what was easy to read, what wasn't. So. Well, I wanted to leave enough time for questions, or if you have particular areas that you wanted to dig on, or if not. Yeah.
I have applicable question.
Okay.
So going back to the plagiarism of ideas, this is probably best done with an example.
Sure.
So we have a nutrition journal club that meets, a couple times a month
Okay.
at a pub. And so we talk about a lot of different experimental designs and how we would do things. And so I was sent, I'm also in an early career researchers group.
Yep.
And so one of the other career researchers sent me his aims for his K.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, this should be good. Like, this is stuff I know. And
Yeah.
I look at it, and it's something that we've all kind of discussed
Hmm.
in this journal club. Now, the idea is not very novel per se.
Okay.
It's not like drug
Yeah.
discovery or something. But the design and the application and some of the other aspects of it
Mhm.
kind of are almost like group ideas.
Hmm.
But I'm sure multiple people in the group came to the same conclusion at the same time.
Yeah.
So how is that dealt with, and how do you work that out, especially if there's maybe a PI involved or something?
Yeah. That's one of those gray areas. So plagiarism of ideas, we really think about ideas that are taken, if you will, following the review of a manuscript before it's published,
Okay.
or from a grant. With regard to kind of that group discussion, or that happens to conversations in the hallway, right? Overheard, and then someone else, wow, that's a great idea, I'm going to run with it. That's really not something that can be adjudicated, if you will. But I think it does call for communication around collaboration. Those can be thorny and sticky conversations. But if it's in kind of that public domain, that would be really difficult to show that it's been plagiarized. Again, if it hasn't been published or reviewed, or can be demonstrated that this particular idea or text was taken from something that hasn't been published, or that was under review as a grant application, then that's that you can demonstrate action for. But things of that nature, and that happens a lot, right? It's happened to colleagues of mine where expressed an idea, junior faculty member with a more senior faculty member, and then the senior faculty member puts his postdoc on the idea, and you go, lesson learned, lesson learned. So, I mean, the nature of funding these days makes us all so competitive that I think that's kind of the sad part of it. But, I mean, good question. I don't think I have a happy answer though.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's kind of what I was feeling. Is just like
It's
check
tough.
things. And then, so if you are like a postdoc leaving the lab, and you have ideas that you've discussed with a mentor, that would go back to, like, how would that be dealt with? Do you think?
I encourage those conversations right at the beginning, before the training starts, so that you are both on the same page, whether it's through this individual development plan, for example, but you both know that you want to take that piece with you. That's the ideal situation, right? Usually it happens maybe a month or two before you leave. I would say very much to have some type of action plan or communication plan laid out so that everyone knows who's doing what, and if there's authorship involved, how that person would be an author. I'll give myself as an example. I was a postdoc at Hopkins. I was promoted to instructor when I got my own research award, but I was still in my former mentor's space. I was providing my own monies for my stipend, salary, what have you. I was buying my supplies, but I was in his space, right? So the ideas and work that I did, I brought with me to launch here. He tried to lay claim to because I was in his space. And he was angry that I didn't stay. Long story short, there was an authorship issue. My chair here stepped in and helped me navigate, such that my former mentor was a co-author, but he was an anchor. That was me. I needed that ultimately for grants and promotion and so forth. So that's kind of when it goes sideways. But that's why I strongly encourage those to happen earlier on. And if not, put together a plan to move forward. Good question. Others,
I
yeah.
think too, there are a number of resources on campus to help you navigate that too. If you can't talk to if the issue is with your mentor and how you're going to move forward in that, then there are other people you need to be talking to guide you to get that. So whether it's David Chaplin, who's in mentoring space, or Lisa, who does a lot of work with mentoring as well.
Yeah. Yeah, authorship issues, if you were to stay here, authorship issues do deflect back to the chair. But what if your mentor is the chair? Right, then, yeah, definitely.
And then maybe, since you guys talked as a group, and we've had many conversations around teen science and how teams are built,
Mhm.
but looking at career opportunities
Mhm.
that maybe
Yeah.
not going to be listed.
Yeah, I think that's what, so we have a meeting next week, I think, and I'm gonna kind of bring that up, like, hey, this has an exercise component, and I happen to be an exercise person, and you're a nutrition person, maybe we should, try something
Yeah.
like that. I mean, if not, I don't really care, I've got lots of ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's, it's competitive, right? But if you have an idea, you want it to be done.
Mhm.
And so if that
Yeah.
means somebody else does it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Your question is answered.
keep it on the science.
Some people are not